Hey guys, tonight we begin with Tower of Babel, Genesis 11. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey. In the quiet hours of ancient time, when the world was young and the memories of the great flood still whispered through the generations, there lived upon the earth a people united by a single tongue. Their words flowed like gentle streams, carrying the same meanings from one heart to another, binding them together in understanding that knew no barriers. The descendants of Noah had spread across the fertile plains, their footsteps soft upon the earth as they moved eastward, following the warmth of the sun and the promise of rich soil. They carried with them the skills passed down through generations, the knowledge of building and planting, of weaving and crafting. Their voices rose together in the evening air, sharing stories of their ancestors and dreams of the days to come. As they journeyed, the vast expanse of Shinar opened before them like a welcoming embrace. Here, the land stretched endlessly in all directions, flat and fertile, crossed by rivers that sparkled in the morning light. The soil was dark and rich, perfect for growing grain and vegetables. The grass grew tall and green, providing grazing for their flocks. This was a place where they could settle, where they could build homes and raise their children in peace. The people gathered their belongings and made their camp in this pleasant valley, their tents dotting the landscape like flowers scattered across a meadow. Here, they decided, they would remain and grow into a great nation, united by their common language and shared hopes for the future. The fertile valley stretches endlessly beneath a canopy of stars, each one a gentle light watching over the growing settlement. Families gather around small fires, their voices soft in the evening air as they share stories passed down through generations. Children listen with wide eyes as elders speak of distant lands and the long journey that brought them here. In this peaceful place between the great rivers, something beautiful is taking shape. Not just the mud brick homes or the carefully tended gardens, but a shared vision that seems to shimmer in the warm night air like heat rising from sun-baked earth. The people speak of it in hushed, reverent tones as they prepare for sleep. An old craftsman runs his weathered hands along a piece of timber, imagining how it might fit into something magnificent. A young mother rocks her baby while gazing upward, dreaming of reaching toward those distant stars. Merchants from far-off places sit beside farmers who have never left this valley, yet they all share the same gentle yearning. The dream grows stronger each night, passed from one sleeping mind to another like a whispered secret. They see themselves working together, their hands shaping something that will touch the heavens themselves. Not born from pride or defiance, but from a deep desire to create beauty together, to build something that will unite them all under one magnificent purpose. As the fires burn low and voices fade to contented murmurs, the dream settles over the valley like a soft blanket. Tomorrow they will begin to speak of it openly, to plan and prepare. But tonight, it lives in the peaceful space between waking and sleeping, where all things seem possible and the stars feel close enough to touch. The morning sun casts long shadows across the plain as the first workers arrive at what will become the foundation of their great tower. Their footsteps are soft against the earth, still damp with dew from the night before. These earliest laborers carry simple tools, wooden handles worn smooth by countless hands, bronze implements that catch the gentle light. In the distance, smoke rises from the brick kilns that have been working through the night. The scent of baking clay mingles with the fresh morning air, creating something almost like the smell of bread from a village oven. The first bricks are already cooling in neat rows, their surfaces bearing the marks of their makers. Each one is roughly the size of a man's forearm, reddish-brown in color, with small variations that speak to the human hands that shaped them. Some bear the gentle impressions of fingers, others show the subtle texture of the wooden molds used to form them. Workers move with unhurried purpose, their conversations flowing like water over stones. They speak of their families, of the harvest, of small concerns that seem to dissolve in the shared rhythm of their labor. The way individual voices blend into a harmonious murmur that rises and falls like breathing. Their voices are calm and measured as they explain the placement of each brick, the proper mixture of clay and straw, the patient process of building something meant to last. This is not rushed work. It's the careful, deliberate craft of people who understand that great things grow slowly, like trees reaching toward the sky. As the sun climbs higher, the workers settle into their gentle rhythm, laying brick upon brick with steady, peaceful determination. The wind carries more than dust across the plain of Shinar tonight. It whispers stories of ambition and unity, of dreams that reach toward heaven itself. As evening settles over the great construction site, the gentle breeze moves through the scaffolding and around the growing tower, creating soft melodies that seem to speak of ancient purposes. Workers have returned to their homes, leaving behind tools and half-finished sections of wall. The bricks they crafted today still hold warmth from the sun, and the bitumen between them glistens faintly in the moonlight. Each level of the tower tells a story of human cooperation, of families working side by side with neighbors they've known since childhood. The wind moves through the empty passages, carrying with it the scent of cooking fires from the city below. Mothers tend to evening meals while children play in courtyards, their laughter mixing with the soft rush of air through the tower's chambers. Fathers sit in doorways, discussing tomorrow's work with quiet satisfaction. Above, the stars seem closer than they did when construction began. The builders sleep peacefully, dreaming of the moment when their great work will be complete, when their names will be remembered through all generations. Tonight the wind seems to pause, as if considering the determination of these people who share one language, one purpose, one dream. It moves gently through their homes, blessing their rest, carrying their hopes upward into the vast darkness above. The plain of Shinar holds its breath, waiting for tomorrow's dawn to bring new progress toward their magnificent goal. In the fertile valley between the Tigris and Euphrates, where the morning mist still clings to the reed beds, something remarkable flows through the settlement like a gentle river. The language of these people moves with the same rhythm as their daily tasks, each word fitting perfectly into the next like stones in a well-built wall. Listen closely to the sounds drifting from the workshops. The potter speaks to his apprentice about the clay's readiness, his voice carrying the same cadence as the wheels turning. The words for moisture, for fire, for the perfect moment to shape the vessel, these have been passed down through generations, polished smooth by countless tellings. In the grain fields beyond the town, harvesters call to one another across the golden stalks. Their language holds the weight of seasons, words that capture the exact moment when wheat is ready, the particular way morning light falls across ripe barley. Each phrase carries knowledge accumulated over lifetimes, wisdom embedded in the very sounds they make. The children playing near the river speak the same tongue as their grandparents, though their voices ring higher, clearer, like bells in the cool air. They invent games with words, creating playful rhymes that their elders smile to hear. This shared language binds the generations together, creating bridges across time. Watch how the merchants from distant settlements arrive with their caravans, yet they too speak words that flow naturally with the local tongue. Trade agreements unfold in familiar phrases. Stories are shared around evening fires in language that everyone understands. The world feels smaller, more connected, when words carry the same meaning for all who hear them. As twilight settles over the valley, the universal language wraps around the community like a warm blanket. In workshops and homes, in fields and marketplaces, the same gentle words continue their ancient work of binding hearts and minds together in perfect understanding. The kilns burn day and night now, their gentle flames dancing like captured stars against the darkening sky. Each brick begins its journey in the soft earth beside the river, where workers knead the clay with careful patience. The mud yields to their touch, becoming smooth and pliable, ready to hold its new form. They press it into wooden molds, creating uniform blocks that will fit together seamlessly in the great construction above. The fire speaks in whispers as it transforms the wet clay into something permanent. Orange flames curl around each brick, drawing out the moisture and leaving behind something harder, stronger. The heat moves through the clay like a gentle hand, changing its very nature from soft earth to enduring stone. Smoke rises from the kilns in lazy spirals, carrying the scent of baked earth across the plain. The brickmakers tend their fires with devotion, adding fuel at just the right moments, adjusting the heat to achieve the perfect color and strength. Each brick emerges from the flames with a warm reddish glow that gradually fades to a deep earthy brown. Rows upon rows of finished bricks cool in the evening air, stretching across the ground like a vast garden of clay. Tomorrow they will be carried up the ramps to join their brothers in the tower's walls, but tonight they rest, still warm from their transformation in the fire. The workers move among them with quiet satisfaction, knowing that their patient craft helps lift human ambition ever higher toward the heavens. The clay has become brick, the brick will become tower, and the tower reaches always upward into the star-filled darkness above. The construction continues at its steady, methodical pace. Workers move with practiced efficiency, their movements flowing like water around stone. The tower grows taller with each passing day, its shadow stretching longer across the plain as the sun traces its familiar path overhead. Brick by brick, the structure reaches toward the heavens. The rhythm of construction has become a gentle heartbeat across the valley. The sound of tools against stone creates a soft percussion that echoes off the surrounding hills. Steam rises from the bitumen pits where the binding mortar is prepared, creating gentle wisps that dance in the warm air. The workers have developed their own quiet language of gestures and nods. A raised hand means more mortar is needed. A gentle tap on the shoulder signals the completion of another course. They work in harmony, each person knowing their role in this grand undertaking. As the tower climbs higher, the view from its levels expands. Workers pause occasionally to gaze out over the fertile plains that stretch beyond the city walls. Rivers wind like silver ribbons through green fields. Distant mountains rise like sleeping giants on the horizon, their peaks touched with purple shadows. The architectural marvel takes shape slowly, deliberately. Each level is carefully planned and executed. The builders check their measurements twice, ensuring that every angle is true and every surface level. They take pride in their craftsmanship, knowing that this structure will stand for generations. Evening brings a peaceful conclusion to each day's work. The workers descend the tower's ramps as the sun sets, their footsteps creating a gentle rhythm on the stone. Cooking fires begin to twinkle across the city like earthbound stars, and families gather to share their evening meals. The tower stands sentinel over the valley, its silhouette etched against the deepening sky. Through the gentle morning mist, voices begin to weave together across the construction site. Workers call to one another in the same tongue their ancestors have spoken since time began, their words flowing like water from stone to stone, level to level. Near the eastern foundation, a group of masons discusses the day's work. Their conversation drifts softly through the air, mixing with the quiet sounds of tools being prepared and materials being sorted. The foreman's voice carries a note of pride as he describes the previous day's progress, his words painting pictures of rising walls and perfect joints. Higher up on the scaffolding, the voices of younger workers blend with those of seasoned craftsmen. Stories pass between them like gentle breezes, tales of distant lands and ancient ways. An old builder shares wisdom about reading the stone's grain, his weathered hands guiding those of an apprentice as they work together in quiet concentration. The language they speak carries the weight of generations, each word polished smooth by countless tellings. Commands become almost musical as they echo softly from the lower levels to the higher reaches of the growing structure. There is something deeply peaceful about this shared understanding, this common tongue that connects every soul laboring on the great tower. Women arrive with the morning meal, their voices adding new melodies to the gentle symphony of human speech. They speak of harvest preparations and family gatherings, their words weaving comfort into the fabric of the workday. Children's laughter punctuates their conversation, bright notes scattered like flower petals on the warming air. In the administrative areas, scribes record the day's plans in careful script, their quiet discussions focused on measurements and material calculations. Their voices carry the same cadence as all the others, part of the vast chorus that rises with the sun over Babel's plains. The universal language flows like honey, sweet and unifying, binding together every heart and mind in common purpose. Today, as always, every word spoken is perfectly understood by every ear that hears it. The tower grows not just in height, but in the harmony of shared expression, each voice adding its own gentle note to the peaceful song of human cooperation. The tower sleeps under a blanket of stars, its massive form casting gentle shadows across the plain below. Night watchmen move quietly along the completed levels, their oil lamps creating pools of warm light that dance softly in the evening breeze. The flame of each lamp flickers peacefully, casting moving patterns on the brick walls that seem to breathe with life. Below in the workers' quarters, families have gathered around small cookfires. Children listen wide-eyed as their grandparents share stories from distant lands, tales of mountains that touch the clouds and rivers that flow like silver ribbons through endless valleys. The soft murmur of voices mingles with the gentle crackling of wood, creating a symphony of human connection that rises like incense toward the heavens. In the tower itself, scribes work by lamplight, carefully recording the day's progress in their clay tablets. Their styluses move rhythmically across the soft clay, marking measurements and calculations with practiced precision. The scratch of writing tools creates a soothing rhythm, like gentle rain on leaves, as they document each brick laid and each level climbed. The night air carries the scent of cooling earth, and the lingering fragrance of evening meals. Bread baked in clay ovens, herbs gathered from riverside gardens, and the sweet smoke of burning olive wood blend together in a comforting embrace. This is the smell of home, of community, of dreams taking shape beneath the watchful stars. High above, the newest level of the tower catches moonlight on its freshly laid bricks. The mortar between them gleams like silver thread, binding stone to stone in an endless pattern of human ambition. Each brick represents countless hands working together, voices calling out in harmony, hearts beating with shared purpose. The tower stands as a testament to what people can accomplish when they speak the same language, when they understand each other perfectly, when their dreams align like stars in constellation. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new heights to reach, new bricks to lay. But tonight, all is peaceful in the shadow of humanity's greatest achievement. Night settles over the tower's growing form, and the workers have finally laid down their tools. The great scaffolding rises into the darkness like a skeleton of wood and rope, reaching towards stars that seem to watch with ancient patience. Moonlight filters through the wooden framework, casting gentle patterns across the empty work platforms. The night air carries the scent of fresh timber and dried clay. Somewhere in the distance, a night bird calls softly, its voice echoing off the stone foundations. The tower stands perhaps 30 cubits high now, its base solid and reassuring against the earth. Each level of scaffolding tells the story of another day's labor, another step toward the heavens. A gentle breeze stirs through the wooden beams, creating the softest whisper as it moves between the supports. The rope fastenings creak ever so quietly, a rhythm as peaceful as a lullaby. Below, the city sleeps, its people dreaming of tomorrow's work, of bricks to be laid and mortar to be mixed. The moon climbs higher, illuminating the careful craftsmanship visible even in the scaffolding itself. Each joint has been secured with patience, each platform built to bear the weight of stone and human ambition. The structure seems to breathe with the night wind, swaying almost imperceptibly, as if the tower itself is settling into sleep. Workers' tools lie neatly arranged on the platforms, waiting for dawn. Wooden buckets, smoothed by countless hands, sit beside coils of rope that will lift tomorrow's materials. The great windlass used for hoisting stones casts a long shadow in the moonlight, its wheel still and silent. Far below, the foundations disappear into shadow, but their strength can be felt even here, anchoring this growing monument to human unity. The tower rises not in defiance of the night, but as part of it, reaching upward with quiet determination while the world around it finds its rest. In the quiet hours before dawn, when the great tower stands silhouetted against the star-filled sky, the builders rest in their simple dwellings scattered throughout the growing city. Their dreams are filled with visions of tomorrow's work, of stones perfectly fitted and mortar smoothly applied. Nimrod sleeps deeply in his tent, his weathered hands still bearing the calluses of honest labor alongside his people. In his dreams, he sees the tower reaching ever upward, each level bringing them closer to their shared vision of unity and strength. The dream carries no burden of pride, only the peaceful satisfaction of skilled craftsmen working in harmony. The master builders dream of innovations yet to come, of pulleys and ramps that will ease their work, of new techniques for shaping stone that will make their construction even more beautiful. Their minds, even in sleep, continue to solve the gentle puzzles of engineering that each new day brings. Young apprentices dream of the day when they too will be trusted with the most delicate work, when their hands will know the precise pressure needed to set a cornerstone, when their eyes will judge the trueness of a wall with the wisdom of experience. The women who prepare the daily meals dream of abundant harvests, of grain stores that will feed the growing community, of children playing safely in the shadows of the great work their parents are creating together. In these peaceful dreams, the tower grows not from ambition or defiance, but from the simple human desire to create something lasting and beautiful together. The dreamers see their work as a gift to future generations, a testament to what can be accomplished when people unite their skills and hearts toward a common purpose. The night air carries the soft sounds of their restful breathing, while high above, the unfinished tower keeps its silent vigil beneath the ancient stars, waiting patiently for morning's return. The morning sun filters through the partially completed tower, casting long shadows across the construction site. Workers move with practiced ease, their voices creating a gentle symphony of coordination. The sound of laughter drifts from a group of younger builders who have discovered that the acoustics of their rising structure create amusing echoes. One calls out a simple greeting, and it bounces off the stone walls in layers, returning transformed. The workers pause their hammering to listen, delighted by this unexpected gift their creation has given them. Children who bring water to their parents stop to test their own voices against the tower's walls, giggling as their words return to them, changed and multiplied. An elderly mason explains to his apprentice how sound travels through stone and air, how the shape of their tower captures voices and sends them dancing through the corridors they have built. The apprentice nods thoughtfully, then whispers a secret to the wall, smiling as it whispers back. As the day progresses, the tower seems to develop its own voice. The wind moving through the unfinished levels creates a soft humming, like a peaceful song. Workers begin to time their hammering to this natural rhythm, their tools keeping beat with the tower's gentle music. The sound of voices calling instructions blends with the scraping of mortar being smoothed, the soft thud of stones being set into place. Even the creaking of the wooden scaffolding adds to this symphony of construction, each sound finding its place in the peaceful chorus. By evening, as the workers prepare to rest, the tower holds all the sounds of the day within its walls. The echo of their laughter, the memory of their songs, the whispered conversations between friends. The structure has become not just a monument of stone and mortar, but a keeper of human voices, a vessel that holds the gentle sounds of their shared endeavor. As darkness settles over Babel, the tower stands quietly, filled with the day's echoes, ready to welcome tomorrow's voices into its growing embrace. The great tower casts its shadow across the plain now, a shadow that grows longer with each passing day as the structure climbs toward the heavens. Workers move through this cool darkness during the heat of midday, grateful for the respite it provides from the blazing sun above. In the shadow's embrace, children play games with pebbles and sticks, their laughter echoing softly against the massive foundation stones. Their mothers sit nearby, weaving baskets and sharing quiet conversations about the tower's progress, their voices blending with the distant sounds of construction. The shadow shifts gradually as the sun moves across the sky, sweeping over workshops where artisans craft decorative elements for the tower's surface. Here, skilled hands shape clay into intricate patterns, each piece designed to catch and reflect light once placed upon the tower's walls. Market vendors arrange their wares in the shadow's path, knowing that customers prefer to shop in the cooler air found there. They spread colourful cloth over their goods, creating small islands of comfort where people can rest and contemplate the massive undertaking rising above them. As evening approaches, the shadow stretches even further, reaching toward the distant hills where shepherds tend their flocks. The tower's silhouette becomes a landmark visible from great distances, a dark finger pointing upward against the golden sky. Workers descend from the higher levels as daylight fades, their tools secured and their tasks completed for another day. The shadow seems to hold memories of all who have passed through it, from the first planners who envisioned this great work to the countless hands that have shaped each brick and beam. It provides a sense of continuity, connecting past efforts with future aspirations. Night falls gently over the plain and the tower's shadow merges with the natural darkness, becoming one with the peaceful silence that settles over the ancient world. Dawn approaches the great tower with the gentleness of a whispered prayer. The morning mist rises from the river valleys below, carrying with it the scent of dew-kissed grass and the promise of another day's labour. This ethereal veil drifts upward through the scaffolding, wrapping around the massive stone blocks like silk scarves around sleeping giants. The workers who have spent the night in the tower's lower chambers begin to stir. Their dreams have been filled with visions of reaching the heavens, of touching the very dwelling place of the divine. Now, as consciousness slowly returns, they find themselves suspended between earth and sky, neither fully grounded nor truly airborne. Nimrod stands at one of the tower's many windows, watching the mist swirl around the structure. In this soft light, the ambitious project seems almost mystical, as if it might dissolve into the morning air like the fog itself. The harsh edges of stone and mortar are softened, rendered dreamlike by the gentle embrace of the dawn. Below, the city awakens gradually. Smoke begins to curl from cooking fires, and the first merchants prepare their wares for the day's trade. But up here, in this realm between earth and heaven, time seems to move differently. The mist creates a cocoon of silence, muffling the sounds of the waking world. The tower's guards lean against the stone walls, their night watch nearly complete. They have grown accustomed to the strange acoustics of this place, how voices carry differently at such heights, how the wind seems to speak in languages they cannot understand. The morning mist only adds to this otherworldly quality, creating shapes and shadows that dance just beyond the edge of vision. As the sun climbs higher, the mist begins its slow retreat, revealing more of the tower's impressive height. Workers emerge from their resting places, rubbing sleep from their eyes, ready to continue their ascent toward the heavens. The morning brings with it renewed determination, another day closer to their ultimate goal. The children of Babel grow up knowing only the sounds of construction. Their lullabies are the gentle tapping of hammers against stone, their morning songs, the soft scraping of mortar being mixed in wooden bowls. They learn to walk on paths lined with bricks still warm from the kilns, their small hands reaching up to touch the smooth surfaces of walls that seem to climb endlessly toward the heavens. In the early light of dawn, these children gather at the base of the great tower, their voices joining in the universal language that flows like water through every home and heart. They speak of dreams that stretch as high as their parents' ambitions, of a world where every word is understood, where every thought finds its perfect expression in sounds that need no translation. The oldest among them, barely reaching the height of a grown man's waist, traces patterns in the dust with sticks, creating symbols that tell stories of unity and shared purpose. The youngest ones, still learning to form the words that bind their community together, clap their hands in rhythm as they watch the tower grow brick by brick above them. Their playground is the vast construction site, though they are kept safely away from the actual building work. They create small towers of their own with leftover clay, miniature versions of the great structure that dominates their sky. Their games involve stacking and building, reaching and climbing, always upward, always higher, mirroring the aspirations of their elders. Teachers gather these children in quiet circles, sharing stories of the time before the tower, when their people wandered without purpose, when the earth felt too large and empty. Now they speak of belonging, of contributing to something magnificent, of being part of a generation that will touch the very dwelling place of the divine. The children listen with wide eyes, their young minds absorbing these lessons of unity and achievement. They dream of the day when they too will carry bricks, when their hands will add to the great work, when their voices will join the ancient songs of construction that echo through the valley at eventide. The evening air grows cooler as families gather around their cooking fires, the day's labour complete. Children settle beside their parents on woven mats, their eyes reflecting the dancing flames while the adults share the stories that have been passed down through generations. An elder named Kenan begins tonight's tale, his weathered hands gesturing slowly as he speaks of the time before the great tower, when his grandfather's grandfather lived in distant lands where the grass grew tall and the rivers ran clear. The children listen with wide eyes as he describes the great herds of animals that once roamed freely across endless plains. Young mothers rock their babies while listening to tales of the old ways, how their ancestors read the stars for guidance, how they celebrated the changing seasons with simple songs, how they honored the earth that provided their daily bread. These stories carry the weight of memory, connecting each generation to the wisdom of those who came before. The fire crackles softly as another voice joins in, telling of the early days when families first began to gather together, forming the small communities that would eventually grow into the great city. There's something comforting in these shared memories, in the way each story builds upon the last, creating a tapestry of understanding that wraps around the listeners like a warm blanket. As the flames settle lower, the voices grow softer and the children's eyelids grow heavy. The stories continue in gentle murmurs, carrying everyone toward peaceful rest, surrounded by the warmth of community and the eternal rhythm of shared human experience under the star-filled sky. In the depths of the tower, where the great furnaces have grown cold and the hammers no longer ring against bronze, a profound stillness settles over the massive structure. The workers have departed to their homes scattered throughout the plain, leaving behind only the whisper of wind through the countless chambers and corridors they have carved from stone and clay. High above, in the uppermost levels where the tower reaches toward the heavens like a mountain of human ambition, the night air flows gently through the open archways. The stars shine down with their ancient light, the same stars that have watched over this land since the first dawn after the great flood. They cast soft shadows across the construction platforms where tomorrow's work awaits. In the silence, you can almost hear the tower breathing, as if it were a living thing drawing breath through its many openings. The massive stones, each one shaped by countless hands, hold the warmth of the day's sun, even as the cool night air begins to flow around them. Mortar and bitumen, that black substance drawn from the earth's depths, bind everything together in a unity that seems as permanent as the mountains themselves. In the simple dwellings of mud, brick and timber, families gather around their evening meals, sharing the day's accomplishments and making plans for tomorrow's continued ascent toward the sky. Children fall asleep to stories of what magnificent things they will build, what wonders they will achieve when the tower finally reaches its destined height. Even the animals sense this deep tranquility. The cattle rest in their enclosures, the sheep fold their legs beneath them in the fields, and the birds that nest in the tower's many crevices tuck their heads beneath their wings. All of creation seems to pause in this moment, suspended between what has been accomplished and what is yet to come. The great project continues its patient climb toward heaven, stone by stone, day by day, in the profound silence that comes before the dawn of change. The morning sun cast long shadows across the construction site, but something felt different in the air. Workers moved with less certainty than before, their voices carrying an edge that hadn't been there the day prior. The great tower stretched upward, its levels now reaching heights that made the ground seem distant and small. Nimrod stood at the base, his weathered hands gripping the stone plans. The measurements no longer seemed as clear as they once had. Words that had flowed so easily from his tongue now felt heavy and uncertain. When he called to the foreman about the placement of the next level, the man's response came back garbled, as if spoken through water. The brickmakers worked in groups, their conversations growing shorter with each passing hour. Where once they had shared stories and laughter while shaping clay, now they focused intently on their tasks, speaking only when necessary. The rhythm of their work began to falter, like musicians slowly losing their shared tempo. In the upper levels, stonemasons paused in their chiseling, looking at one another with puzzled expressions. The words they used to discuss their craft seemed to twist and change, familiar sounds becoming strange on their tongues. They repeated themselves more often, gesturing with their hands to fill the gaps that words no longer bridged. The great pulleys and ropes continued their work, but the commands that guided them grew confused. Workers called out instructions that their colleagues couldn't quite grasp, leading to hesitation and delay. The smooth coordination that had marked their progress began to stumble and break. As the sun reached its peak, the entire construction site hummed with an undercurrent of confusion. The tower itself remained unchanged, its stones solid and secure. But the people who built it found themselves adrift in a sea of shifting meaning. The dream of reaching heaven seemed suddenly distant, not because of the height they needed to climb, but because of the growing silence that separated them from one another. The morning sun rises over Shinar, casting long shadows across the great construction site. But something feels different today. The workers gather as they always do, their tools in hand, ready to continue their monumental task. Yet when they open their mouths to greet one another, strange sounds emerge. A mason reaches for his trowel and calls to his partner, but the words that come forth are unfamiliar even to his own ears. His companion stares back with confusion, speaking in return with sounds that seem to flow like music, yet carry no meaning. The mason can grasp. Across the site, a carpenter gestures frantically to his crew, his voice creating sharp, precise syllables that dance through the air like nothing they have heard before. The workers look at one another with growing bewilderment, their faces showing the slow realization that something fundamental has changed. The foremen stride through the crowds, shouting instructions, but their commands scatter like leaves in the wind. Some workers tilt their heads, straining to understand sounds that seem both familiar and completely foreign. Others begin to speak more slowly, as if careful pronunciation might somehow bridge this sudden gap. Near the tower's base, a group of brickmakers discovers they can understand each other perfectly, their words flowing in melodic tones that rise and fall like gentle waves. But when they try to communicate with the rope handlers nearby, they might as well be speaking to the wind itself. The great tower stands unchanged, its levels reaching toward the heavens as they did yesterday. But the unified voice that built it stone by stone has fractured into countless streams, each flowing in its own direction, carrying meaning only to those who share its particular rhythm and sound. The morning that followed brought with it a strange quietness that seemed to settle over the construction site like dust after a windstorm. Workers arrived as they always had, their tools familiar in their hands, their routines worn smooth by countless repetitions. Yet something had shifted in the very air around the tower. Nimrod stood at his usual observation point, watching the crews gather below. The supervisors called out their morning instructions, but here and there, workers paused with puzzled expressions. A mason reached for his trowel and hesitated, as if the word for it had momentarily slipped away. A rope-bearer stopped mid-stride, looking at the coiled hemp in his hands as though seeing it for the first time. At first, these moments were brief, like shadows passing across the sun. The workers would shake their heads, smile at their own forgetfulness, and continue with their tasks. But as the morning progressed, these pauses grew longer and more frequent. In the brick-making quarter, two workers who had labored side by side for months found themselves struggling to communicate about the simplest tasks. One pointed to the clay mixer, opening his mouth to speak, then closing it again with a bewildered expression. The other nodded, as if he understood, but his response seemed to miss the mark entirely. Young scribes who had been documenting the tower's progress found their styluses hovering uncertainly over their tablets. The symbols they had carved thousands of times before seemed somehow different now. their meanings not quite as clear as they had been the day before. Some set down their tools entirely, rubbing their temples as if trying to massage away a persistent fog. The great wheel that lifted stones to the upper levels continued its steady rotation, but the calls that coordinated its movement became increasingly confused. Workers gestured more and relied on their voices less, though even their gestures seemed somehow less certain than before. As the sun climbed higher, an unusual hush began to spread across the construction site, broken only by the soft sounds of work continuing at a slower, more cautious pace. The great tower stands in silence now, its massive stone blocks catching the pale light of dawn. Where once thousands of voices filled the air with purpose and determination, now only the wind whispers through the empty scaffolding that still clings to its unfinished sides. The morning mist drifts around the base of the structure, curling through abandoned work sites where tools lie scattered exactly where they were dropped. Hammers rest beside unfinished joints, their wooden handles smooth from countless hands that will never return to claim them. Ropes hang loose from pulleys that no longer strain under heavy loads, swaying gently in the quiet breeze. The tower itself reaches toward the heavens, its walls thick and strong, built with the finest craftsmanship the world had ever seen. Each stone was cut with precision, each joint sealed with care. The lower levels are complete, their surfaces smooth and true, while the upper sections show the gradual transition from finished work to rough beginnings where construction suddenly ceased. Birds have begun to make their homes in the crevices between stones, their soft chirping the only sound that regularly breaks the silence. Small plants push through cracks in the mortar, nature slowly beginning to reclaim what human hands had built with such ambition. The morning light grows stronger, illuminating the vast courtyard that surrounds the tower. Here too, the signs of sudden departure are everywhere. Cooking fires have long since grown cold, their ashes scattered by wind and weather. Temporary shelters stand empty, their fabric walls fluttering like forgotten prayers. In the distance, the great river continues its eternal flow, indifferent to the dreams that were built and abandoned on its banks. The tower stands as a monument to human ambition, forever reaching upward but never to be completed. A silent testament to the day when one language became many and unity dissolved into confusion. The great scattering had begun, and across the vast expanse of the earth, small groups of people walked slowly away from the abandoned tower. Their footsteps created soft paths through tall grass and over gentle hills, each family carrying only what they could hold in their arms. In the soft morning light, you could see them moving like streams of water finding their way down a mountainside, naturally flowing toward different valleys and distant horizons. Some headed toward the rising sun, others toward the setting sun, and still others toward the cool northern winds or the warm southern breezes. The woman who had once mixed clay for bricks now walked beside a quiet river, her children gathering smooth stones along the water's edge. She spoke to them in words that felt both new and ancient, teaching them the names of flowers and birds in their transformed language. Her voice carried a gentle melody that seemed to match the rhythm of the flowing water. Far across the plain, the man who had once carried heavy stones up the tower's endless ramps now sat beneath a spreading oak tree, watching clouds drift peacefully overhead. His hands, once calloused from building, now held seeds that he scattered gently into the soft earth. He hummed a wordless tune while he worked, content in this quieter purpose. In another direction, families had discovered a sheltered valley where fruit trees grew wild and springs bubbled up from the ground. They built simple shelters from branches and leaves, creating homes that felt more like embraces than the cold ambition of their former tower. Children played games that needed no shared language, their laughter universal and bright. The elderly storyteller, her hair now silver as moonlight, sat with a new group of listeners around a small fire. Though her words had changed, her story still carried the same gentle wisdom, speaking of stars and seasons, of patience and kindness. Those who heard her felt comforted, even as they learned this new way of speaking. As evening approached, these scattered communities prepared for rest under the same stars that had once looked down upon their unified ambition. Now, instead of one great tower reaching toward heaven, countless small lights flickered across the landscape, cooking fires, oil lamps, and the warm glow of peaceful homes. The great tower stands silent now, its stones scattered across the plain like ancient memories. Where once the sounds of countless voices rose in unified purpose, now only the gentle whisper of wind moves through the empty spaces between fallen blocks. The people have journeyed far from this place, carrying with them new languages that bloom like flowers in distant gardens. In the east, families have settled beside flowing rivers, their children learning words that sound like music in the evening air. To the west, other groups have found fertile valleys where their new tongue rolls softly off their tongues like honey. Each scattered tribe discovers that their language shapes not just their words, but their very thoughts. The desert dwellers speak of sand and stars with reverence, their phrases flowing like dunes in endless wind. Mountain peoples craft words that echo off stone faces, sharp and clear as mountain springs. Hands that once lifted massive stones now build smaller homes with gentle care. The knowledge of architecture spreads across the earth like seeds on fertile ground, growing into temples and dwellings that reflect each culture's unique beauty. In quiet moments, the older ones sometimes remember the great plain where they all once worked together. They speak of it not with bitterness, but with the soft wonder of those who witness something extraordinary. The tower may have fallen, but the human spirit to build, to create, to reach toward something greater continues in every settlement, every carved stone, every whispered prayer. The earth itself seems to breathe more easily now, no longer bearing the weight of that impossible dream. In its place, 1,000 smaller dreams take root across the world, each one perfect in its own gentle way. The great tower stands silent now, its construction halted as permanently as if time itself had stopped. Where once the sounds of hammers and chisels rang out across the plain, now only the gentle whisper of wind moves through the abandoned scaffolding. The morning sun casts long shadows across the scattered tools and unfinished blocks of stone, each one a testament to dreams that reached too high. Workers who labored side by side just yesterday now gather in small clusters, speaking in tongues that sound foreign even to their own ears. A mason reaches for his hammer and calls out to his companion, but the words that emerge are strange and unfamiliar. His friend responds, but the sounds make no sense. They look at each other with growing confusion, gesturing toward the stones, pointing at the tools, trying to bridge this sudden chasm that has opened between them. The Hebrew foreman who once directed the laying of each foundation stone now finds himself unable to communicate with the Egyptian carpenters who shaped the wooden frames. The Akkadian merchants who supplied the precious materials discover they cannot negotiate with the Sumerian traders who brought the finest cedar. Each group begins to understand only their own newly formed speech, as if invisible walls have been built between minds that once shared a common purpose. Throughout the settlement, families pack their belongings with quiet resignation. Children who played together yesterday now speak in different rhythms, their games interrupted by the barrier of language. Mothers gather their household goods, while fathers secure their tools, preparing for journeys to distant lands where their new tongues might find others who can understand. The plain of Shinar, once united under a single ambitious vision, now witnesses the gentle but inevitable parting of peoples. Some head toward the mountains, others toward the rivers, each group drawn by an inexplicable pull toward regions that will become their new homes. The great scattering has begun, not with violence or haste, but with the quiet acceptance of a fate that seems written in the very nature of things. The first light of dawn touches the scattered camps with fingers of gold and amber. People stir slowly from their sleep, wrapped in simple blankets and animal skins, their faces peaceful in the gentle morning glow. The great tower stands silent against the brightening sky, its abandoned stones catching the early sunlight like a monument to dreams once shared. In the Mesopotamian plain, small cooking fires begin to flicker to life. Women tend to these flames with practiced care, their movements unhurried and graceful. The smoke rises straight up in the still air, carrying the comforting scents of barley porridge and roasted grain. Children wake gradually, their voices soft and drowsy as they greet the new day in languages their parents are still learning to understand. The morning brings with it a strange sense of possibility. Though the people can no longer speak as one, they find other ways to communicate. A potter from one group approaches a weaver from another, their hands speaking where words cannot. They trade clay vessels for woven cloth, their smiles bridging the gap between their different tongues. Near the river, men gather to share the morning's fishing. They point to the water, to their nets, to the sun climbing higher in the eastern sky. Laughter ripples between them, a sound that needs no translation. Their children play nearby, chasing butterflies through the tall grass, their games requiring no common language, only the universal joy of youth. The great plain stretches endlessly around them, dotted now with these small communities of families and friends. Each group has found its own rhythm, its own way of greeting the dawn. Some sing soft melodies in their new languages. Others sit in contemplative silence, watching the world wake around them. As the sun climbs higher, the tower's shadow grows shorter. The massive structure seems somehow smaller in the morning light, less imposing, more like a sleeping giant resting peacefully on the plain. Birds nest in its crevices now, their songs adding life to the silent stones. The people begin to pack their few belongings, preparing for another day of gentle wandering. They move with purpose, but without haste, following invisible paths that seem to call to them across the vast landscape. The morning air is cool and sweet, filled with the promise of new discoveries and peaceful journeys ahead. In the stillness that followed the great scattering, wisdom began to settle like morning dew upon the earth. The lessons of the tower would echo through generations, whispered from parent to child beside flickering hearth fires, carried in the songs of travelers crossing distant plains. The tower itself stood as a monument to human ambition, its broken stones speaking of dreams that had reached too high, too fast. Yet in its shadow, something beautiful was taking root. The scattered peoples were learning that true strength came not from building toward heaven, but from building toward each other. In the valleys where the brickmakers had settled, they discovered that clay could be shaped into vessels of beauty as well as strength. Their hands, once driven by the fever of endless construction, now moved with gentle purpose, creating bowls and urns that would hold the stories of their new lives. The architects found themselves designing not monuments to pride, but homes that sheltered families, workshops that fostered craft, and gathering places where different tongues could slowly learn to understand one another through gesture and kindness. Children played among the ruins, their laughter rising where once the sounds of hammers and commands had echoed. They built small towers from fallen stones, then knocked them down with giggles, unconsciously teaching themselves that nothing built in haste need last forever. The lesson whispered itself through the evening air, that human greatness lay not in touching heaven, but in touching hearts, not in speaking with one voice, but in learning to listen to many. Instead, scattered like seeds across the earth, they were learning to grow in ways their ancestors had never imagined. And in this gentle spreading, this quiet blooming, the true tower was being built, not of brick and mortar, but of understanding, patience, and the slow, steady work of hearts learning to bridge the spaces between different words, different ways. different dreams of what it meant to be human under the endless, patient sky. The ancient stones seem to hold memories within their weathered surfaces, and as evening settles over the abandoned construction site, these memories begin to whisper their stories. The wind carries fragments of conversations that once echoed here, voices speaking in languages that have long since faded from the world. A merchant's voice drifts through the air, discussing the weight of bronze ingots and the quality of cedar beams. His words blend with those of a master builder, explaining the precise angle needed for the tower's ascending walls. Children's laughter mingles with the steady rhythm of workers' chants, creating a gentle symphony of human activity that once filled this place with purpose and hope. The voices speak of dreams shared across different tongues, of families who travelled great distances to be part of something magnificent. An old woman's voice tells of recipes passed down through generations, ingredients traded between peoples who had never before tasted each other's foods. A young father speaks softly to his child, pointing toward the growing tower and describing the view they would one day share from its heights. These phantom conversations layer upon each other like sediment, each generation of workers adding their voices to the collective memory of this place. The stones absorbed not just the sounds of construction, but the hopes and fears of those who shaped them. A supervisor's patient instructions to new workers blend with evening prayers offered in dozens of different dialects. As the night deepens, the voices grow softer, more distant, until they become part of the gentle wind itself. The memories settle back into the ancient stones, waiting, perhaps, for another quiet evening to share their stories once more. The silence that follows feels peaceful, filled with the contentment of stories told and memories honored. A soft breeze moves through the scattered stones, carrying with it the faint scent of wild grasses that have begun to claim the spaces between fallen blocks. The wind seems to whisper stories of what once was, rustling through the abandoned scaffolding that still leans against partially completed walls. The sun has begun its gentle descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. This golden light falls across the remnants of the great tower, casting long shadows that stretch across the empty courtyard where thousands of workers once gathered each morning. Here and there, small clusters of people move slowly among the ruins, their voices hushed as they search for tools left behind or materials that might still be useful. Some pause to run their hands along the smooth surfaces of finished stone blocks, marveling at the craftsmanship that will now never reach its intended purpose. A family passes by, their belongings bundled on their backs, speaking in quiet tones in a language that sounds different from the others around them. They stop for a moment beside a particularly well-crafted section of wall, and the father points upward, perhaps explaining to his children how high the tower might have reached. The wind grows stronger as evening approaches, creating a gentle, rhythmic sound as it moves through the empty doorways and unfinished chambers. It carries with it the distant calls of birds returning to their nests, and somewhere in the ruins a small stream trickles peacefully over stones that have tumbled from the construction. The great mixing basins that once held mortar now collect rainwater and fallen leaves. Small flowers have begun to bloom in the cracks between paving stones, their delicate petals adding touches of colour to the weathered surfaces. Workers who remain continue their quiet conversations in their newly distinct languages, gesturing with their hands when words fail them, finding ways to communicate despite the barriers that have suddenly appeared between them. The peaceful evening light continues to fade, and the wind carries with it the promise of night's approach, gentle and inevitable. The night sky stretches endlessly above the great tower, a vast canopy of stars that seems to mock the ambitions of those who sought to reach heaven itself. From this height, the stars appear closer than they ever have before, yet still impossibly distant. Each point of light twinkles with ancient wisdom, bearing witness to countless civilizations that have risen and fallen beneath their watchful gaze. The workers who once labored here looked up at these same stars, perhaps wondering if their great construction would truly bring them closer to the divine realm above. Now, in the gentle darkness, we can almost hear the whispered prayers that once drifted upward from the tower's many levels, carried on the evening breeze toward those distant lights. The constellations wheel slowly overhead, following their eternal patterns. The same stars that guided ancient shepherds across desert sands now shine down upon the abandoned stones of Babel. Time moves differently here beneath their light, measured not in hours or days, but in the slow turning of seasons and the gradual shifting of the heavens themselves. A soft wind stirs through the upper reaches of the tower, carrying with it the scent of night-blooming flowers from distant gardens. The air is thin and cool at this height, filled with the kind of peaceful silence that comes only in the deep hours of night when the world below has settled into sleep. The moon, a silver crescent, hangs like a gentle smile among the stars. Its pale light bathes the tower's upper stones in a soft glow, transforming the ancient bricks into something almost ethereal. Shadows dance slowly across the weathered surfaces, creating patterns that seem to tell stories of their own. In this quiet moment, suspended between earth and sky, we can feel the profound peace that comes from gazing upward into infinity. The stars continue their silent vigil, reminding us that some things endure beyond the reach of human ambition, constant and comforting in their eternal dance across the heavens above. The elders gather in the temple's innermost chamber, their weathered hands tracing ancient symbols carved into stone tablets. These are the keepers of memory, those who remember when all voices spoke as one, when understanding flowed like water between hearts and minds. Tonight they share the old stories with the young scribes, passing down what must not be forgotten. The eldest among them, her hair white as temple incense, speaks in hushed tones of the time before the great scattering. Her words carry the weight of countless tellings, each one a thread in the tapestry of human memory. The builders worked in perfect harmony then, she explains, their tools moving in rhythm, their plans shared without confusion or doubt. A young scribe leans forward, stylus poised over clay, capturing these precious words. The elder's voice grows softer still, as she describes the moment when understanding began to fragment, when familiar words became foreign sounds, when the great work ground to a halt, not from lack of will, but from the simple inability to share thoughts as they once had. In the temple's silence, punctuated only by the gentle scratch of stylus on clay, the story continues. The elder speaks of the days that followed, when groups formed around the sounds they recognized, when the single great city became many smaller camps, each clustered around their own emerging tongue. Yet even in this tale of division, she finds gentleness. The separation was not born of anger between peoples, but of a profound change in how they could speak to one another. Families stayed together, friends found new ways to communicate through gesture and kindness, and slowly, gradually, each group began to find its own path forward. The scribes worked steadily, their young fingers carefully preserving these memories in clay that will outlast them all. Tomorrow, others will read these words, will remember the time of unity, and will carry forward both the loss and the hope that memory brings. The great tower stands silent now in the gentle darkness, its massive stones holding the quiet of the night like a sacred trust. Workers have returned to their homes scattered throughout the valley, leaving behind their tools and their dreams of reaching the heavens. The night air moves softly through the incomplete corridors and chambers, carrying with it the scent of cooling stone and settling dust. In the lower levels of the tower, shadows pool in corners where torches once burned brightly during the day's labor. The silence here is profound, broken only by the occasional whisper of wind through the carefully placed stones. Each block tells a story of human ambition, of countless hands working together toward a single magnificent goal. The city below spreads out like a gentle carpet of soft lights flickering in windows, where families gather for their evening meals and children drift toward sleep. From the tower's height, these lights appear as tiny stars brought down to earth, each one representing lives intertwined with the great building project that dominates their world. Guards walk their quiet rounds along the tower's completed sections, their footsteps measured and peaceful. They pause occasionally to gaze out over the sleeping valley or up toward the actual stars that seem both closer and more distant than ever before. The night sky above appears vast and welcoming, filled with possibilities that tomorrow's work might bring them nearer to touching. Even in this stillness, the tower seems to hum with potential energy, as if the very stones remember the hands that shaped them and the voices that guided their placement. The silence is not empty, but full of dreams and aspirations, waiting patiently for dawn to bring renewed purpose to this monument of human determination. Tonight, the tower rests, content in its growing majesty, while the world around it sleeps peacefully in the gentle embrace of darkness. The evening breeze carries with it the gentlest whisper through the streets of Babylon, touching the faces of workers as they make their way home from another day at the great tower. The wind speaks in soft murmurs, rustling through the fabric of tents and stirring the embers of cooking fires that dot the sprawling settlement. In the quieter corners of the city, where the sounds of construction fade to a distant hum, families gather around their evening meals. The bread is warm, the conversation flows like honey, and children lean against their parents as stories are shared in the fading light. These moments feel timeless, as if they could stretch on forever in perfect contentment. The tower itself stands silent now, a massive shadow against the deepening sky. Its unfinished top reaches toward the first stars, and the scaffolding creaks gently in the evening air. Workers have left their tools carefully arranged for tomorrow's labor, each brick and beam positioned with the care of those who believe in their great work. Somewhere in the distance, a flute plays a simple melody, its notes dancing on the breeze like leaves carried by an unseen current. The music seems to come from everywhere and nowhere, weaving through the settlement like a thread connecting every heart to the same peaceful rhythm. As darkness settles more completely over the land, oil lamps begin to flicker to life in windows and doorways. Their warm glow creates pockets of golden light that feel like embraces against the cool night air. The city breathes slowly, settling into rest with the satisfied exhale of a day well lived. The breeze continues its gentle journey, carrying the scents of jasmine and cedar, the distant sound of laughter, and the quiet prayers of those who look up at the stars and feel grateful for another day. In this place they are building together. In the quiet workshops where the bricks were shaped, skilled hands worked the clay with ancient knowledge passed down through generations. The potters rose before dawn, their fingers already knowing the feel of earth and water, the precise pressure needed to transform simple mud into something lasting. Each handful carried the essence of countless seasons, the patient accumulation of silt and sediment that had traveled from distant mountains. The craftsman would knead it slowly, working out air bubbles, adding just enough water to make it pliable yet strong. In the dim light of oil lamps, they shaped each brick with careful attention. The wooden molds were worn smooth from use, their edges rounded by thousands of repetitions. The clay yielded willingly, taking on the rectangular form that would become part of something greater than itself. Young apprentices watched in respectful silence, learning not just the techniques but the rhythm of the work. They understood that this was more than mere construction. They were participating in humanity's greatest endeavor, their humble contribution part of a tower that would reach toward heaven itself. bricks were laid out in careful rows, turned at precisely the right moment to prevent cracking. The desert sun would draw moisture from the clay gradually, strengthening the bonds between particles. Each brick became a small miracle of transformation, earth made permanent through human skill and time. Even in their simple rectangular form, the bricks seemed to anticipate their destiny. They would be stacked with others, mortared together with bitumen, becoming part of walls that climbed higher than any structure ever attempted. The clay remembered its origins in the earth while dreaming of touching the sky. The fire that once burned bright at the heart of the great city now flickers with gentle amber light, casting soft shadows across the scattered stones. The flames dance lower tonight, their warmth reaching only a small circle of ground where a few families still gather, their voices barely above whispers as they share the day's simple findings. A woman tends the coals with practiced care, adding dried grass and small twigs to keep the light alive a little longer. Her movements are unhurried, deliberate, as if she understands that this flame represents something more than warmth, perhaps the last connection to what once was. The soft crackling sounds create a peaceful rhythm that seems to slow time itself. Children sit cross-legged on worn blankets, their eyes heavy with sleep as they watch the embers glow and fade. One young boy traces patterns in the dust with his finger, creating simple shapes that disappear with each gentle breeze. A girl leans against her mother's shoulder, her breathing already deep, and even as the fire's warmth wraps around them like a soft embrace. The adults speak in hushed tones about tomorrow's journey, their words carrying no urgency, only quiet acceptance. They discuss which direction feels right, where water might be found, what gifts the new land might offer. Their planning is gentle, unhurried, as if they've learned that the path reveals itself to those who walk it with patience. The fire settles lower, its light growing softer, more golden. The shadows lengthen and blur, creating a dream-like quality to everything they touch. One by one, the families begin to prepare their sleeping places, spreading simple cloths on the ground, near enough to feel the fire's dying warmth. As the night deepens, the flames become just glowing coals, their light barely strong enough to illuminate the peaceful faces of those who sleep nearby. The fire's last glow holds them all in its gentle embrace, a quiet ending to one story and the softest beginning of another. In the softer moments of evening, when the great tower's construction had paused for the day, children would gather around the elders with eyes full of wonder. Their small voices carried questions that drifted through the peaceful air like gentle whispers. A young girl with braided hair tugged at her grandmother's robe. "Why do we build so high?" she asked, her voice barely above a murmur. The grandmother's weathered hands smoothed the child's hair as she spoke of dreams that reached toward the heavens, of a people who wished to touch the very stars themselves. Near the cooking fires, a boy sat cross-legged beside his father, watching the flames dance in the growing dusk. "Will we really reach the clouds?" he wondered aloud, his words mixing with the soft crackle of burning wood. His father's voice was warm as honey as he described how each stone they placed brought them closer to their celestial goal. The questions flowed like a gentle stream through the evening gatherings. Children asked about the birds that soared past their windows, whether the tower would one day rise higher than their wings could carry them. They wondered about the sun and moon, and whether their great structure would allow them to greet these lights as neighbors. Elders answered with patience, their voices creating a soothing rhythm that blended with the evening breeze. They spoke of unity, of a people working together with one purpose, one language, one shared dream reaching ever upward. As the stars began to appear, the children's questions grew softer, their curiosity mixing with the approaching calm of night. The tower stood silent against the darkening sky, holding within its stones all the hopes and dreams that had been shared in whispered conversations throughout the peaceful evening hours. In the quieter corners of the great city, where shadows gather between the mud-brick buildings and the sounds of construction fade to whispers, the elderly storytellers hold their evening gatherings. These are the keepers of memory, the ones who remember when the world was different, when languages flowed like separate rivers rather than the single stream of speech that now binds all humanity together. Tonight, old Miriam adjusts her woolen shawl and speaks in hushed tones to the children who gather at her feet. Her voice carries the weight of years, soft as worn leather, as she tells them of the time before the great tower began to rise. She speaks of scattered tribes who came together, drawn by whispers of a grand endeavor that would touch the very heavens themselves. The children listen with wide eyes as she describes the early days, when the first foundations were laid and the earth trembled with anticipation. Her weathered hands move gently through the air, painting pictures of those who came from distant lands, carrying their tools and their dreams, all united by the same tongue, the same grand vision. Across the courtyard, another elder named Joachim shares his own memories with a small group of young apprentices. His voice flows like honey mixed with sand as he recalls the morning when the great project was first announced. He speaks of the excitement that rippled through the settlements, the way people packed their belongings and journeyed toward this place that would become their new home. The evening air carries these stories like gentle smoke, weaving through the narrow streets where other elders continue their ancient duty. They speak of the unity that bound everyone together, the shared purpose that made strangers into neighbors, neighbors into family. Their words drift upward toward the stars, which seem to listen with patient silence to these tales of human ambition and hope. As the night deepens, the stories continue, each one adding another layer to the great tapestry of memory that surrounds the rising tower. High above the great construction, the moon moves across the star-filled sky like a gentle guardian, watching over the sleeping world. Its silver light bathes the tower's rising stones, casting long shadows that stretch across the quiet plaza below. The night air is cool and still, carrying with it the faint scent of burned lime and cedar wood from the day's work. In the workers' quarters, families have gathered around small clay oil lamps, their warm glow creating circles of comfort in the darkness. Children sleep on woven mats, their breathing soft and even, while mothers hum ancient lullabies passed down through generations. The tower itself stands like a mountain against the night sky, its completed levels reaching toward the stars with quiet determination. Each stone block, carefully placed during the daylight hours, now rests in peaceful silence, waiting for tomorrow's sun to awaken the builders once more. The mortar between them has begun to harden, creating bonds that will hold through countless seasons. From the highest completed level, the entire river valley spreads out below like a vast tapestry woven from moonbeams and shadow. The Euphrates winds its way through the landscape, its surface reflecting the celestial lights above. Palm groves stand in dark clusters along the banks, their fronds swaying gently in the night breeze. Guards walk their quiet rounds along the construction site, their footsteps barely audible on the packed earth. They move with practiced ease, checking that tools are properly stored and that the precious building materials remain secure until dawn. In the distance, night birds call softly to one another across the marshlands, their voices adding to the peaceful symphony of evening sounds. The moon continues its slow journey across the heavens, promising that morning will come again, bringing with it another day of patient building and shared purpose. The evening air carries whispers of what came before, gentle reminders of the world that existed in the time of Noah and his sons. In the growing settlement, the elders sometimes speak of those earlier days when the earth was washed clean and humanity began anew from the wooden vessel that rode the waters. Shem, the eldest of Noah's sons, walks slowly through the camp as twilight deepens around the tents and cooking fires. His weathered hands remember the feel of the ark's wooden beams, the weight of caring for countless creatures during those long months upon the endless sea. Now, decades later, he watches his children and grandchildren with eyes that have seen both destruction and renewal. The younger generations gather around the evening fires, their voices mixing with the soft crackling of burning wood. They speak of tomorrow's work on the great tower, of the bricks they will make and the height they will achieve. But Shem's thoughts drift to quieter memories, to the rainbow that appeared when the waters receded, and to his father's words about walking humbly with the divine. In the distance, the tower's foundation spreads wide and dark against the star-filled sky. The work continues even now, torches flickering where the most devoted builders shape clay and straw into tomorrow's bricks. The rhythm of their labor creates a gentle percussion that mingles with the night sounds of the plain. Shem's wife, Ariel, joins him in his evening walk. Together they move through the peaceful camp, past families sharing simple meals and children playing quiet games in the dust. The couple's presence brings comfort to those they pass, a living connection to the great story of survival and hope that brought them all to this moment. These memories flow like a gentle river through the settlement, carrying the wisdom of the past toward whatever tomorrow may bring to the builders of Babel. In the quiet hours before dawn, when the great tower stood silent against the star-filled sky, there came a different kind of awakening, not the harsh clamor of construction, but something softer, more profound. The workers who had labored so long began to sense a change in the very air around them. Nimrod stood at the highest completed level, gazing out over the sprawling city below. The flames of countless torches flickered like earthbound stars stretching to the horizon. Yet something had shifted in his heart during these peaceful night hours. The driving ambition that had once consumed him now felt distant, like a fever that had finally broken. Below in the streets, families gathered in their doorways, speaking in the tongues that had become their own. Children played games that needed no translation, their laughter echoing off the ancient stones. Merchants from distant lands found ways to trade and share stories, their hands gesturing toward common understanding. In the temple courtyard, an elderly scribe sat with his scrolls, no longer recording the daily progress of the tower's construction. Instead, he wrote of something deeper. The realization that had come to him in dreams, that knowledge and wisdom were not things to be seized and hoarded, but gifts to be received with humble hearts. The moon cast its gentle light over the settlement, and in that silver glow, people began to understand that their great work had changed them in ways they had never intended. They had sought to build upward to the heavens, but in their scattered wandering, they had discovered something more precious. They had found that the divine light they sought was not above them in some distant realm, but within them, in their capacity for compassion, wonder, and connection with one another. The tower would remain unfinished, but the light of understanding had only just begun to dawn. In the aftermath of the tower's collapse, something unexpected settles over the scattered stones and broken mortar. The dust has long since settled, carried away by countless seasons of wind and rain. Where once stood humanity's greatest ambition, now lies a gentle collection of weathered ruins, softened by time and touched by an almost sacred stillness. The broken stones have become home to small creatures seeking shelter. Lizards bask on sun-warmed granite blocks, their tiny hearts beating peacefully against the ancient stone. Crickets have made their homes in the crevices between fallen bricks, their evening songs creating a lullaby among the remnants of human pride. Wild grasses push through gaps in the foundation, their delicate green shoots reaching toward the sky with quiet determination. Unlike the tower that once stretched upward in defiance, these plants grow with patient grace, swaying gently in the evening breeze. Wildflowers have claimed the corners where walls once met, their petals catching the last golden light of day. A small stream has carved its way through the ruins over the centuries, its waters clear and cool as they wind between the fallen blocks. The sound of water trickling over stone creates a constant, soothing whisper that seems to speak of forgiveness and renewal. Smooth pebbles line the streambed, polished by countless years of gentle current. The ruins have become a place of unexpected beauty, where nature has reclaimed what was once a monument to human ambition. Moss covers the rough edges of broken stones, softening their harsh lines with velvet green. Vines climb the remaining walls, their leaves rustling like whispered prayers in the wind. Birds nest in the protected spaces between the stones, their songs at dawn and dusk filling the air with peaceful melodies. The ancient mortar crumbles slowly, returning to earth, while the foundations sink deeper into the soil with each passing season. Time moves differently here, measured not in the frantic pace of construction, but in the patient rhythm of growth and decay. The scattered stones tell their own quiet story now, one of peace found in surrender, of beauty discovered in brokenness, of the gentle triumph of time over the urgency of human striving. The morning sun filters through the cracks in the abandoned tower, casting long shadows across the scattered stones. In the distance, you can hear the soft voices of people speaking in tongues that have become foreign to one another overnight. The great work has stopped, and the silence feels heavier than the weight of all the bricks they once carried. An old woman sits by the remnants of what was once the central courtyard, her weathered hands tracing patterns in the dust. She remembers when everyone understood each other, when the dream of reaching heaven united them all. Now she watches small groups forming, people gravitating toward those who share their newfound languages, their words flowing like streams, finding new paths down a mountainside. Children play nearby, their laughter universal, even as their words have changed. They build small towers with pebbles and twigs, innocent of the weight their parents once carried. The woman smiles, knowing that dreams, like children, adapt more easily than those who have known only one way of being. The wind carries fragments of conversation from different directions. To the east, a group discusses their plans to travel toward the rising sun. To the west, others speak of fertile valleys they have heard about in stories. The great gathering is becoming many smaller ones, each thread of humanity preparing to weave itself into the larger tapestry of the world. As evening approaches, cooking fires begin to dot the landscape around the tower. The scents of familiar foods mingle with the cool air, and for a moment, the divisions seem less important than the shared human need for warmth and nourishment. Tomorrow will bring more farewells, more partings, but tonight there is still the comfort of proximity, the gentle knowledge that change, even when it scatters us, carries within it the seeds of new beginnings. The desert wind carries whispers of ancient days, stirring the golden sands that have witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. Here, where the great tower once cast its shadow across the land, time moves differently. The grains beneath your feet hold memories of when humanity spoke with one voice, when dreams reached toward heaven itself. You walk slowly through this timeless landscape, each step sinking gently into sand that has been shaped by millennia of wind and weather. The dunes roll endlessly in every direction, their curved forms creating a rhythm that soothes the soul. In the distance, the ruins of ancient settlements peek through the golden waves, their weathered stones telling stories of the people who once called this place home. The sun hangs low in the sky, painting everything in warm amber light. Shadows stretch long and soft across the sand, creating cool pockets where desert flowers bloom in quiet defiance of the harsh environment. These small miracles remind you that even in the most barren places, life finds a way to flourish. As you continue your gentle journey, you notice fragments scattered in the sand. Pieces of clay tablets, worn smooth by time, bearing traces of the many languages that emerged after the Great Confusion. Each fragment represents a people, a culture, a way of seeing the world that grew from the scattering at Babel. The wind shifts, and for a moment you can almost hear the echoes of those ancient voices, no longer unified, but each carrying its own beauty, its own wisdom. The diversity that once seemed like punishment has become a gift, enriching the world with countless perspectives and ways of understanding. You find a comfortable spot on a gentle slope of sand, settling down to rest as the desert continues its eternal dance around you. The sands of time flow softly past, carrying with them the lessons of ages, the understanding that from division can come beauty, from confusion can come clarity, and from endings can come new beginnings. The morning sun rises over empty fields where once the great tower stretched toward heaven. Grass grows quietly through spaces between scattered bricks, and wildflowers bloom in colors that seem softer somehow, as if the earth itself has learned to whisper. Birds fly overhead in patterns that flow like water, no longer needing to navigate around that massive structure that once divided their sky. Their songs drift down through air that feels cleaner, lighter, carrying the gentle scents of herbs and morning dew across the peaceful landscape. In distant lands, the scattered people wake to their new rhythms. The olive grove tenders check their trees with patient hands, speaking words that now belong only to them. The mountain dwellers breathe the thin air of their peaks, their language shaped by wind and stone. Along warm coastlines, fishing communities cast their nets with movements that have become ritual, their speech flowing like the tides they know so well. Each group carries within them the memory of building together, but that memory grows softer with each passing season. Children born under different stars learn different words for the same moon, and their laughter sounds the same in any tongue. Where the tower's foundation once lay, a spring has emerged from deep in the earth. The water runs clear and cold, gathering into a stream that winds through the grassland. Small animals come to drink at dawn and dusk, their quiet presence the only witness to how the world has healed. The sky stretches unbroken now, vast and blue, with clouds that drift freely from horizon to horizon. At night, stars shine down on all the scattered peoples, the same constellations watching over different dreams, different prayers, different ways of finding peace in the gentle darkness. In this quiet after, the earth remembers how to be whole again, even as its people learn to be beautifully, peacefully apart. The evening air carries whispers that seem to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Workers pause in their tasks, tilting their heads towards sounds that drift like lost memories through the construction site. These are not the voices of their companions, but something far more ancient, threading through the spaces between the stones. A young mason sets down his chisel, listening to what sounds like his grandmother's lullaby floating on the breeze. The melody is impossibly clear, yet when he turns to find its source, there is only the gentle rustling of canvas and rope. Another worker hears the distant laughter of children playing games he remembers from his own childhood, but the sound seems to come from the very walls of the tower itself. The supervisors notice how their crews have begun to slow their movements, drawn by these phantom conversations that seem to speak directly to each person's heart. Some hear the voices of loved ones from distant lands, calling their names with tender familiarity. Others catch fragments of stories told in languages they have never learned, yet somehow understand perfectly. As twilight deepens, the mysterious voices grow more frequent. They speak of home and hearth, of quiet valleys where streams run clear and fields stretch green beneath open skies. They whisper of simple pleasures, warm bread shared with neighbors, festivals under starlit heavens, the gentle rhythm of seasons unmarked by grand ambitions. The workers find themselves gathered in small groups, sharing what they have heard. Each person's experience is unique, yet all describe the same sense of being called away from this place of ceaseless building towards something softer, more human in scale. The voices in the wind seem to be reminding them of who they were before they came to this plane, before the dream of touching heaven consumed their days. Tonight, as the mysterious whispers continue their gentle song, the great tower stands as a monument to human determination, while the evening breeze carries messages of simpler truths that touch the soul. Words themselves became the true legacy of Babel, scattered like seeds across the awakening world. In quiet valleys where new settlements took root, the descendants of the great tower carried with them not stone or mortar, but the precious gift of language itself. Each group treasured their particular way of speaking, their unique manner of expressing the thoughts that dwelled within human hearts. Grandmothers would tell their grandchildren of the time before, when any person could speak with any other, when the barriers between hearts were lower than they had become. These stories were passed down like treasured heirlooms, growing softer and more beautiful with each telling. In the lands to the east, where the sun first painted the sky with morning light, communities developed their own rhythms of speech. Their words flowed like water over smooth stones, carrying meanings that seemed to dance on the tongue. Children learned to speak by listening to the wind through grain fields, their language taking on the gentle cadence of swaying wheat. Far to the west, where mountains touched the clouds, another people found their voice in the echoing calls that bounced between stone peaks. Their speech grew strong and clear, each word carefully chosen to carry across great distances. They learned to communicate with gesture and inflection, understanding that meaning lived not just in words, but in the spaces between them. The southern peoples, dwelling where warm rains nourished abundant gardens, developed languages as rich and varied as the fruits they tended. Their conversations bloomed with color and imagery, each phrase painted with the vivid hues of their flourishing world. They spoke of growing things with reverence, their words themselves seeming to encourage life and renewal. In the northern lands, where winter nights stretched long and fires burned bright in every hearth, storytelling became the heart of language. Their words were crafted for the long, dark months, designed to carry listeners through tales that could span entire seasons. Each story was a carefully woven tapestry of sound and meaning, warming hearts when snow lay deep upon the ground. Though the people could no longer understand each other's speech, they recognized something familiar in the act of speaking itself. The tilt of a head while listening, the gesture of hands while explaining, the soft murmur of a mother singing to her child. These remained constant across all the scattered tribes. Language had divided them, but humanity still connected them in ways deeper than words. Evening settles over the scattered settlements like a gentle blanket, and the people who once worked together on the Great Tower now find themselves adapting to their new realities. The familiar sounds of construction have faded, replaced by the softer rhythms of daily life in smaller communities. In one settlement, families gather around cooking fires as the last light of day fades from the sky. The smoke rises in lazy spirals, carrying with it the comforting sense of roasted grain and herbs. Children play simple games in the dirt, their laughter creating its own universal language that needs no translation. An elderly woman sits beside her fire, her weathered hands working clay into useful shapes. Though the words around her have changed, the ancient rhythms of her craft remain the same. The clay responds to her touch just as it always has, forming vessels that will hold water and grain for her family. Nearby, a young father teaches his son to weave grass into baskets, their fingers working together in quiet concentration. The movements are slow and deliberate, each strand placed with care. The basket grows gradually, taking shape through patience and repetition. In another part of the settlement, people share their evening meal in comfortable silence. The food tastes familiar, even when the words to describe it have become foreign. Bread still nourishes, water still refreshes, and the act of sharing still brings people together across the barriers of language. As darkness deepens, the settlements grow quiet. Oil lamps flicker in windows, casting warm pools of light that seem to hold back the vastness of the night. In these gentle circles of illumination, people find comfort in the simple presence of others, even when words fail them. The stars emerge one by one, the same constellations that have watched over humanity since the beginning. Under this ancient canopy, the scattered people of the earth settle into sleep, each community finding its own way forward in the world. Above the plain of Shinar, the night sky spreads like a vast tapestry woven with points of light. Each star seems to hold a story, a memory of times when humanity looked up with wonder rather than ambition. The constellations wheel slowly overhead, unchanging witnesses to the hopes and dreams of those who walk beneath them. In the gentle darkness, shepherds tend their flocks on the hills surrounding the great construction site. They know these stars by name, these ancient patterns their fathers taught them to read. The great hunter rises in the east, his belt of 3 bright stars marking the turning of seasons. The swan glides across the river of light that flows from horizon to horizon, while the crown sits quietly above, its modest circle of stars a reminder that true majesty needs no towering monument. The workers sleep now in their camps, their breathing soft and regular. But the stars continue their eternal dance, indifferent to human ambition. They remember when the first people looked up and wondered at the vastness above them, when they told stories around fires and passed down wisdom through generations. The stars have watched civilizations rise and fall, have seen the proud humbled and the humble lifted up. A gentle breeze stirs the night air, carrying with it the scent of wild herbs and distant rain. The sounds of construction have faded into memory for now, replaced by the soft rustle of grass and the distant call of night birds. The great tower stands incomplete against the starlight, its shadow falling across the plain like a finger pointing toward the earth rather than the heavens. In this quiet hour, the stars seem to whisper their ancient songs, lullabies of light that have soothed countless generations. They speak of patience and humility, of the beauty found in accepting one's place in the grand design of creation. The night sky offers its own kind of peace, a reminder that some mysteries are meant to be pondered rather than conquered. The desert stretches endlessly beyond the scattered remnants of Babel, its sand dunes rolling like gentle waves frozen in time. Here, where the great tower once cast its shadow, only whispers of wind remain to tell the story of what was. The silence is profound, broken only by the soft shifting of sand grains as they dance across the cooling earth. In this vast quietude, small creatures begin their evening rituals. Desert mice emerge from hidden burrows, their tiny paws padding silently across the sand as they search for seeds scattered by the day's breeze. Their movements are unhurried, peaceful, as if they understand that this place now belongs to contemplation rather than ambition. The sand itself holds memories in its countless grains. Each particle has witnessed the rise and fall of human dreams, the construction of mighty walls, and the confusion that followed. Now these same grains settle into new patterns, creating small hills and valleys that shift with each passing hour, never quite the same from one moment to the next. A desert owl calls softly from somewhere in the distance, its voice carrying across the empty spaces where thousands once labored with shared purpose. The sound is neither sad nor joyful, simply present, like the steady breathing of the earth itself, as it reclaims what was once given over to stone and mortar. Stars begin to emerge in the deepening sky, their light casting gentle shadows among the remaining foundation stones. These ancient lights have watched over countless civilizations, seeing them rise with hope and fade with time, always returning to the same peaceful silence that now embraces this place. The desert wind picks up slightly, carrying with it the scent of distant oases and the promise of cool night air. It moves through the ruins without urgency, exploring every corner where human voices once echoed, now filling those spaces with its own quiet song. In the quiet hours before dawn, when the great tower cast its longest shadow across the plain, the builders would sometimes pause in their work and remember. These moments came softly, unexpectedly, like morning mist rising from the river. A craftsman would set down his tools and gaze toward the horizon, recalling the fields his grandfather had tended. A mason would touch the stone and remember the first quarry they had opened together, when the work felt lighter and their voices carried the same hopes. The memory of unity lived in small gestures, in the way hands had once moved together without need for instruction, in the rhythm of hammers that had once beaten in perfect time. in the songs that had once risen from every level of the tower, creating harmonies that seemed to lift the very stones into place. These memories lingered in the spaces between words, in the pauses between breaths, in the stillness that settled over the construction site when the wind died down. Some builders kept tokens from those earlier days: a smooth stone from the foundation ceremony, a piece of rope from the first scaffolding, a small tool worn smooth by countless hands. These objects held no power except the power of remembrance, connecting the holders to a time when the tower had been more than stone and mortar, when it had been a shared dream made manifest. The oldest among them spoke of the beginning in hushed tones, as if the words themselves were sacred. They remembered when the first stakes were driven into the earth, when the first prayers were offered, when the first stones were laid with ceremonies that blessed both the work and the workers. They remembered when every face was familiar, when every voice was welcome, when the tower rose not just toward heaven, but from the unified hearts of the people below. These memories softened the edges of the present confusion, offering comfort in the midst of change. They reminded the builders that beneath the growing barriers of language, something deeper remained. The memory of working together, of building together, of dreaming together, and in remembering, they found a peace that transcended words. The dust settles in gentle layers across the construction site as evening approaches. Workers move with slower steps now, their earlier enthusiasm tempered by the weight of countless days spent hauling stone and mortar. The tower rises before them, its shadow stretching longer each day, yet somehow feeling no closer to its ambitious goal. In the workers' quarters, men sit quietly on simple wooden benches, their hands rough from handling brick and rope. They speak in hushed tones about their families in distant lands, about the fields they once tended, about the simple pleasures they left behind to join this grand undertaking. The lamplight flickers softly against weathered faces, each one telling a story of sacrifice and hope. The evening meal is sparse, but shared willingly. Bread breaks easily between calloused fingers, and water tastes sweeter when passed from hand to hand. These men, who came from many places, now find comfort in their shared purpose, though some wonder quietly if their children will remember their faces when they finally return home. Above them, the tower's upper levels remain shrouded in darkness. The builders there work by torchlight, their voices echoing faintly down through the hollow chambers. Each stone they place feels heavier than the last, as if the very air grows thicker with each cubit they climb toward the heavens. The supervisors move through the camps with ledgers and plans, their voices carrying the measured tone of men who count progress in numbers rather than dreams. They mark their tablets with careful strokes, recording the day's work, calculating the materials needed for tomorrow's labor. Their efficiency masks a growing unease, though they speak of it only in whispers. As night deepens, the great project rests under starlight, its massive foundation spreading across the plain like a sleeping giant. The wisdom gained from Babel's fall settles into the hearts of those who witnessed its collapse. In quiet moments beneath star-filled skies, elders share their understanding with younger generations gathered around flickering fires. Their voices carry soft reverence as they speak of pride's danger and humility's value. Children listen with wide eyes as stories unfold of the mighty tower that once reached toward heaven. They learn how unity without wisdom led to confusion, how grand ambitions without divine blessing crumbled into dust. These lessons sink deep into young minds like seeds planted in fertile soil. In scattered communities across the earth, craftsmen approach their work with different hearts. No longer do they seek to build monuments to their own glory. Instead, they create with grateful hands, acknowledging that their skills flow from a source beyond themselves. Each stone placed, each beam raised, carries whispered prayers of thanksgiving. The scattered peoples develop new traditions of remembrance. Some mark certain days with reflection, others weave the story into songs passed down through generations. These rituals serve as gentle reminders that human strength finds its truest expression in recognizing divine sovereignty. Mothers teach their children to build with purpose beyond personal fame. Fathers show their sons how to work with hands that honor something greater than themselves. These lessons spread like morning light across the valleys where the dispersed nations have made their homes. The memory of Babel becomes a compass pointing toward wisdom. When communities gather to plan great works, voices rise to ask not only what they can build, but why they should build it. The questions carry weight, born from understanding that lasted achievements require more than human ambition. In this gentle remembering, the fallen tower's greatest gift emerges. Its collapse taught lessons that no standing monument ever could. The scattered peoples carry forward not just their new languages and customs, but wisdom purchased through humility's patient instruction. In the quiet hours that follow great change, there comes a different kind of stillness. Not the charged silence before a storm, but the gentle quiet of acceptance. The people of Shinar discover this peace now, scattered as they are across the earth, each group carrying within them the seeds of something new. Those who journey toward the northern mountains find themselves beside a lake so clear it mirrors the sky perfectly. Here, they pause in their wandering, drawn by the water's calming presence. The children splash gently at the shore while their parents sit on smooth stones, watching the ripples spread in perfect circles. There is no urgency here, no rush to build or climb or prove. Just the simple pleasure of cool water on warm skin and the sound of peaceful laughter. In the western valleys, another group has discovered groves of fruit trees heavy with harvest. The branches bend low under the weight of apples and pears, and the people gather what they need with quiet gratitude. An elderly woman shows a young child how to choose the ripest fruit, how to twist it gently from the branch. These small teachings, passed from hand to hand, heart to heart, seem more precious now than the grandest tower ever could. They rest in the shade during the heat of the day, sharing stories in their new language, discovering that even simple words can carry deep meaning when spoken with kindness. The rhythm of their conversations flows like the gentle spring that bubbles up from the earth, sustaining and refreshing. Each group, in their own way, learns to be present in this moment. The past, with its towering ambitions, grows distant. The future, unknown but no longer frightening, can wait. What matters is now, this breath, this step, this quiet conversation under the stars. The scribes work through the quiet hours, their reed styluses moving with practiced precision across fresh clay tablets. In the gentle light of oil lamps, they record the conversations between the tower's architects, preserving discussions about weight distribution and the careful mathematics of construction. Each symbol pressed into the soft clay represents years of accumulated knowledge, passed down through generations of builders who understood stone and bronze. In nearby chambers, other scribes document the daily routines of workers, how much grain each family receives, which tools need replacing, when the brickmakers will fire their next batch. These records form an intricate web of information that helps the city function smoothly. The soft scratching of stylus on clay becomes a gentle rhythm that accompanies the night. Young apprentices sit beside their masters, learning to form the wedge-shaped marks that will carry their civilization's knowledge forward. They practice writing simple words, water, bread, home, before gradually advancing to more complex concepts. The master scribes speak in hushed tones, explaining how certain symbols can represent both objects and ideas, how the same mark might mean different things in different contexts. Through small windows, the scribes can see the tower's outline against the star-filled sky. Some pause in their work to gaze upward, wondering what records future generations might keep of their efforts. They imagine scribes yet to come, perhaps working in chambers higher than any built before, documenting achievements that exist now only in the realm of possibility. The tablets they create tonight will outlast the hands that shake them, carrying forward the whispered dreams of a people who dared to build toward heaven itself. The great tower stands silent now, its upper reaches lost in morning mist. Workers who once labored with shared purpose have scattered like seeds on the wind, each group carrying their newly formed languages to distant shores. Where once there was unity of speech, now there is beautiful diversity. In the eastern valleys, some families gather their belongings and begin walking toward the rising sun. Their words sound different now, flowing with new rhythms and melodies. Children who played together yesterday now speak in tongues their friends cannot understand, yet somehow they still smile at one another, still share the universal language of kindness. To the south, another group prepares for their journey. They load their donkeys with tools and provisions, speaking softly in their transformed language. The sounds are musical, almost like singing. They point toward distant mountains, their voices filled with hope rather than sorrow. The tower itself begins to show signs of abandonment. Morning dew collects on unused tools. Birds nest in the scaffolding. Vines slowly claim the lower stones. What was meant to reach heaven becomes a monument to human ambition, gradually returning to the earth from which it came. An elderly woman walks slowly around the tower's base, her weathered hands trailing along the massive stones. She speaks in the old tongue, one of the few who still remembers. Her words are a blessing, a gentle farewell to this place that taught them so much about themselves. The sun climbs higher, warming the scattered camps. Smoke rises from cooking fires as families share their last meals in this place. Tomorrow they will walk different paths, but tonight they rest under the same stars, breathing the same air, sharing the same dreams of home.